Hardy.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd like to congratulate the honourable member for Carshalton and Wallington for securing this important debate. I want to focus my remarks today on the coach industry, because they feel badly let down, and they tell me this is partly because politicians don't understand their industry. So I'm going to start by quoting Kevin Mains from Main Coaches, which is a family firm in Scotland, and he says, "We take children to school, grieving individuals to funerals, vulnerable people to disabled care facilities, and turn up in high-risk situations with shiny shoes to keep the nation moving. We're waiting at the stations when the train stops and the rail replacement is called upon. We are behind the NHS when the country stops moving, and we are truly at the heart of national transport. The coach industry has always been there for the nation. When the trains stop, you get a coach to take you where you need to go, whether it be a job interview, school play or hospital appointment. When planes are grounded, it's a coach and a driver who are set out to keep the people moving forward to their next destination. If everything in the city grinds to a halt and there needs to be an evacuation, we help. Trust me, I have been there personally." The situation for coach companies is deeply worrying. They are all SMEs and the majority are family-run businesses. Last week I met with Alan Acklam from a company called Acklam's Coaches, and he spelled out to me the crisis their industry is facing. And now they were all viable businesses, and they will be again, because after this pandemic, people will want to go to concerts and they will want to go on holiday and start enjoying life again. But right now, tens of thousands of jobs are at stake as a result of coach operators struggling to secure business as the coronavirus pandemic goes on. They've seen a 90% drop in their income for 2020. In 2019, there were 23 million visits by coach, and that has fallen to virtually nothing. There has been no sector-specific support for coach companies, unlike bus, rail and light rail operators. The furlough scheme has been the only source of support up until this point for some companies, and the industry experts estimate 4 in 10 companies could go bust, and 27,000 jobs could be lost if no support is made. Now, furlough has helped, but many coaches have fixed costs, and one told me, and I quote, "Fixed costs will kill the industry prior to the furlough ending." And this is partly because coach companies have tried to do the right thing. Many have upgraded their fleet to improve air quality and reduce emissions, and they've taken out finance agreements in order to do this. Now, the coaches sit idle and the repayments are due. One coach operator told me the cost per day for his coaches was £220, and the coaches are now in negative equity because they're starting to flood the market with them as businesses are trying to sell them. Some firms have been able to negotiate finance payments holidays, but those are now coming to an end, and with no sign of them being renewed. Only 20% of companies have been able to access the coronavirus business interruption loans, and only 15% of companies have been able to access small business support. And I was contacted by a family company from Dorset who sent me a heartbreaking email on the problems they face, and I'm going to quote from it because it's better than anything I could put to the Minister. And it says, "We were told yesterday that we've been refused a coronavirus business interruption loan from our own business bank, Lloyds Bank. We have a bounce-back loan that was going to be paid as part of the CBIL funds. We weren't refused due to bad credit or not being a profitable company. It's because the banks don't know when our industry will return to any form of normality, and they're classing us as maximum risk for any form of lending. They can't see the industry recovering over the next 12 months, so they won't lend us any money. This is what I was told by them over by the phone, and to be honest, I can't believe it. I really can't. I felt very ill last night when my bank said they can't see us returning soon. I didn't realise they were experts in when things will return to some form of normality. Lloyds have also put up a 5-year repayment plan on the application. Rishi Sunak MP said he was extending payments up to 10 years to help us out. Lloyds said they hadn't had that information and have to base it on 5 years. If it was for 10 years, might the application have gone through? The coach operators appreciate the furlough, but as I said before, that's for employees' benefit, not the business itself. Furlough till March is great, but the finance houses will not extend holidays for the coach payments. Once January comes, I will need to find £12,000 a month for coach finance payments with an income of absolutely nothing. My staff will be made redundant just after Christmas if funding doesn't arrive soon. Coach operators are completely left on their own at the moment and have been for 8 months. I have £26,700 left to get me through to March. I'm applying to IWOCA loans, but the rates are higher than Lloyds, and they're saying it's only over 5 years and not 10 years. I have a wife, 5-year-old and 9-year-old to support. Come early next year, we'll be forced out of our home as the money will run out and the coach finance, like others, is secured against our family home. I haven't been scared up until now, but I'm scared now. The only business coaches have at the moment is with school transport, but most companies subsidise this with work or from other jobs, so at the moment that service has been operated at a loss. The industry needs help, and I'm grateful that the Chancellor has told me that the relevant minister would meet with me and representatives from the industry, but I'll be even more grateful when the relevant minister actually puts a date in the diary for that meeting. So in summing up to his remarks, will the Minister please comment on what sector-specific support coaches will get and if the Department will look at classifying them as either tourism or essential travel so they can access some of the grants that are already available? What conversations the Department is having with high street banks about their criteria for lending coronavirus interruption loans to the industry? What support can the Government give the industry with securing extended finance payment holidays? Whether the Government has considered retrospective low emission-based grants for those coach companies that have made such a large investment in greener travel? And has any consideration been given to topping up the costs of school transport during this time? Because coaches are not just for displaying dubious political slogans during referendums and elections.
Can I say what a pleasure it is to serve under your chairmanship? And I'd like to join others who congratulated my honourable friend, the member for Carshalton and Wallington, for securing this important debate. And I've listened extremely carefully to every speech that's been made. And we've had a wide-ranging discussion of a whole range of industries that have obviously been very adversely affected by the experience of COVID up and down the country. Wedding industry, obviously the retail sector in particular, the impact it's had on the high street. I listened very carefully to the Honourable Lady talking about the coach industry. And I will seek to address as many points as I can in my response. And I'd like to thank colleagues for their insightful and constructive contributions. I think, like everyone in this chamber this afternoon, I share the concerns that honourable members have expressed for the financial well-being of the UK's SMEs. It is difficult to overstate their place in and their contribution to the UK economy. And in 2019, last year, the number of SMEs in the UK reached 1.4 million, and that was a 31% increase in 5 years. All of us as constituency MPs know the contribution that SMEs make to our communities. And they now employ over half of the UK workforce. And given that, it's no wonder that helping them endure and adapt to these trying times has been a cornerstone of the government's response to the pandemic. They are front and centre of our thinking. And our strategy, as honourable members will know, has been to protect jobs, including, crucially, those in small and medium-sized businesses. Much of the support we have provided has been with them in mind, including our generous wage support schemes, access to finance through millions of government-backed loans and billions of pounds worth of grant funding, and targeted measures to help with fixed costs like statutory sick pay rebates and tax deferrals. We've already helped keep millions of people in employment through the coronavirus job retention scheme. As of the 18th of October, we had helped 1.2 million employers furlough 9.6 million jobs and paid £41.4 billion in grants. But importantly, we understand that the economic effects of restrictions to tackle the pandemic outlast the restrictions themselves. And that's why last week the Chancellor announced that he was extending the coronavirus job retention scheme until the end of March 2021. I respect the point that some have made about the changing nature of the support, but I would suggest that that is because of the changing nature of COVID, which has driven the response of this government. And the Chancellor has moved very quickly when new health interventions have been made. But this will help protect millions of jobs in the coming months and will allow smaller businesses to get back on their feet quicker when the time comes. We've also supported workers through the Self-Employment Income Support Scheme, one of the most comprehensive and generous support packages for self-employed people anywhere in the world. So on top of the £13.7 billion already claimed by 2.7 million self-employed people through the scheme, a third grant will be available until January, covering 80% of trading profits. A fourth grant will be available from February to April next year, with further details to be provided in due course. But I would want to say that the practical issues that prevented us from being able to include company owner managers, namely not being able to verify the source of their dividend income without introducing unacceptable fraud risks, still remains. Further, the issues around the newly self-employed in 19 to 20, namely that HMRC will not have access to their self-assessment returns in time to verify their eligible income, still remain. And the latest year for which HMRC has tax returns for 18-19 is 18-19, and the 19-20 returns aren't due until the 31st of January 21. Now, Government and the Treasury continues to look carefully at all the representations made on these matters to seek to find a way forward. Of course we do, but we do have to be cognizant of those facts and how we would meaningfully deal with them. But we have pulled out the stops to provide businesses with the credit they need at this difficult time. And I will come on now and address some of the points about the bounce-back loans and CBILS. As of 20th of September, SMEs and other businesses had applied for and received over £50 billion worth of coronavirus business interruption loans and bounce-back loans. Now, as ever, the Honourable Gentleman from Thirsk and Moulton, who's very well informed on these matters, made a number of suggestions about the challenges faced in actually securing loans for some businesses. You know, obviously, we have 28 providers who are accredited for bounce-back loans and 100 who are accredited for CBILS. But in this situation, we do have non-bank lenders who are seeking to be part of that scheme and are struggling to access the finance. Now, as he well knows, the access to the term funding from the Bank of England is something that is a matter for the Bank of England, and we have tried to look at those matters and see if more can be done. The bigger issue that I think we have to learn from during this experience is that we do have differentiated regulation between different banks and different entities that are providing finance. And it is a challenge to both provide consumer protection universally, but also have the right level of capital requirements for different entities. And these are very, very challenging things in extreme times to come up with a neat and quick intervention on. But I will continue to work with him and others across the House to seek ways forward. The Right Honourable Gentleman, the opposition spokesman, asked about the fraud risk, and I think there's a big distinction to be made between fraud in applications and default risk in terms of, when we designed those schemes, and the bounce-back loans in particular, that self-certification form where businesses were obliged to make estimates of their income, their turnover, and were able to access a percentage of that, was designed to be as accessible and as possible. But they had to also state clearly what the actual facts were around their situation. But we are looking, and the Cabinet Office is leading a piece of work across Whitehall to look at fraud risk and to look at even more collaboration between the banks, sharing data about duplicate applications, and we will continue to work very carefully on that. But we are also allowing businesses who have borrowed less than their maximum to top up their bounce-back loans and extend the repayment period. And I appreciate that it must sometimes feel like government statements in our response to the pandemic, just a long list of measures we have taken or are taking. But it is a consequence of the range of things that we're doing. And forgive me, Sir Edward, I will list just a few more ways we are helping businesses that the Honourable Member for Carshalton and Wallington is quite right to be so concerned about. £11.5 billion of grant funding to over 900,000 business premises, with new grants to come through the winter months. An additional £1.1 billion worth of discretionary grant for English councils, and that's cash grants of up to £3,000 for every 4 weeks of closure for English businesses forced to close. Backdated grants provide up to £2,100 per month of support in arrears for eligible businesses that have suffered from reduced demand in recent months. And of course, these schemes are available nationwide, and as the Chancellor announced last week, the upfront guarantee of funding for the devolved administrations is increasing from 14 billion to 16 billion. In the interest of time, I won't, I'm afraid. It is for the devolved administrations to decide how to use that guaranteed funding, irrespective of how the UK government provides support. But this uplift will support businesses across the United Kingdom. We're also protecting businesses with extensive tax breaks, deferrals, and the repayment flexibility through the time to pay scheme. And further government support mechanisms enjoyed by SMEs include the statutory sick pay rebates, eviction protection for commercial tenants until the end of last year. As I say, I hope I've illustrated that SMEs are at the forefront of our minds through this crisis. Support measures available to those businesses represent a significant part of the £200 billion package of support that the government has put forward. And the IMF recently described the UK's economic plan as aggressive, successful in holding down unemployment and business failures, and one of the best examples of coordinated action globally. But I fully accept that it is never going to save every business and every job, and we will continue to engage with colleagues across the House. And so the gentleman, the honourable member from Midlothian, I will look into the meeting that has not happened yet and make sure that happens. And I will also engage with the honourable lady, but I must give the honourable gentleman a few minutes to respond. I'd just like to conclude by saying this. We will continue to listen carefully. We will maintain a flexible approach. As the Chancellor said in the House last week, things need to change when circumstances change. And what that means for the SME business owners up and down the country is simply this. Where and when necessary, we will take swift action to provide the support they need, and we will continue to do so as we work through this awful crisis that has befallen our country. Thank you, Sir Edward.
And in the interest of time, sadly, I can't go through every member's contribution, but can I thank all honourable and right honourable members for attending this debate. I think we've done well to highlight the concerns of the sector and indeed of the petitioners of the two petitions that we've also been brought forward here to debate this afternoon. So can I reiterate my thanks to all colleagues. Also thank the SMEs and the sectors who've made representations to all of us to allow us to come here and express their views this afternoon. Can I thank the Minister for his reply. And as I just want to reiterate in the last minute, we absolutely do welcome the government support and the extended government support through to the new year for SMEs. But if we can go away and ultimately look at that sector-specific support that we've heard about, we do need that roadmap as well. And allow our SMEs not just to survive the pandemic, but actually be the engine of our recovery as we come out the other side. And on that basis, Sir Edward, I beg to move.
The question is that this House has considered support for SMEs during the COVID-19 pandemic. As many as that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. Thank you very much.